It's going to be a fun time in Finland as we enter the final events of the fantasy season. Welcome back to Fantasy Focus, brought to you by 22bet. FaZe's streak may have been beaten at the Blast Fall Finals, but a streak that continues ever on is Maniac's absolute tear of a performance, pulling off a top 2% finish, barely missing out on the illustrious 25-pointer. But this now sets him at number 11 in the world, with the potential to win not only the celebrity leaderboard, but pick up a prize from the top 10 global leaderboard. Maniac has consistently followed the formula of picking a 2-2-1 split, with 2 players from each of the 2 teams that have made grand finals this season. And with a season without significant upsets, this has worked out perfectly. This time around, it was the FaZe Vitality combo, with Spinks and Apex doing numbers, and a sneaky pickup of Config to provide the extra cash for Twist and Rain. With only a handful of games left in the season, the fight for the top 10 is going to be brutal, and no mistakes can be afforded for those vying for the top 3 prizes. I did also want to give a special shout out to myself for a top 11% finish at Blast, which I managed without picking a single FaZe player. I rocked the Zyru Apex combo from Vitality with a double Na'Vi Hobbit dip, proving that you don't necessarily need to pick players that make the grand final to get a good result. Now we're a little late into the season, but I want to show you a lesser known feature of fantasy that might come in handy for your drafts. For your 22bet knowledge bomb, this is how you see who are the best value for money players. Go to any fantasy event that is finished and scroll below the leaderboards. Here you'll see the 8 best value players from that event, meaning the players that got the most bang for their buck. It also includes the best role for that player. This can be particularly useful for events with the same teams attending, if you're umming and ahhing between similar price players. This week's event takes us to Finland, where the Elisa Masters Epsoo kicks off on Wednesday, featuring 8 teams battling it out on land for $200,000, including 3 of the top 10 in mouth, ends, and complexity. This is an interesting event as defending champions Fnatic come into it with just 2 members of their original lineup, while ends deal with the blow of losing both IGL Snappy and Coach Saw. There are 2 groups of 4 teams, with the top 2 from each group going into the single elimination playoff that ends with a best of 5 grand final. Now remember, with fantasy, best of 5 grand finals are weighted more heavily than best of 3, with a 1.25 multiplier on player points earned. Looking at the groups, it's fair to say Group B is stacked, with Mal's Complexity and Furia all event favourites, and Apex always a threatening team. While Group A normally would heavily lean towards Ents, there's certainly upset potential here, with Gamer Legion the team most primed to do so. You have 2 options with your drafting if you're following a 2-2-1 draft, either going in on the team that you think will top each group, or doubling up on 2 teams in one group and hoping they both make it through. In terms of players to consider, we'll begin with the big ballers. And we start with the best player from the highest ranked team here. It's Frozen. Despite 4 series losses to FaZe in CS2, Frozen has maintained fantastic form. Notably in their win over Complexity at Thunderpick, he racked up a 1.76 rating in that BO3. And that's the team that threatens him the most this event. He has a plethora of suitable roles, with Stat Hunter just edging out as the best. He gives you lots of options. On the other side of the coin, yes, Complexity fumbled the bag at Blast to FaZe, but had those 1v4s gone the other way, there was a real chance that they'd have been the one to end FaZe's streak. And Elige is the powerhouse of Complexity, posting a 1.30 rating at Blast and being incredibly consistent on LAN. At 22k, he isn't ridiculously expensive, and entry fragger suits him best, which is great use for a role that can be often difficult to fill. Now these are the safe investments, but sometimes if you're going big baller, you want to go big, take some real risks. Group A's risky favourite is Ents, and Nertz is by far the best pick on this squad, adapting to CS2 faster than Ents' other gold pick, Sunpius. At 225k, he's the same price as Frozen, so you have to weigh up if he'll be worth it over the Mouse Star. But if you do decide to pick Nertz, Attacker is a great role for him. Safe Bet is a difficult category to class when talking teams in Turbulence. The 2 players that comfortably fit this distinction are Floppy and Grim. Complexity are one of the favourites to win the event, and at 208k each, you could even double up on them without breaking the bank. Grim doesn't have the best roles, but multi-fragger or leader would be suitable, while Floppy is great for the support role. If you had to pick one, I'd lean towards Floppy. Not only does the role more suitably fit him, but he's also the more consistent performer of the two. If you're looking at Group A, from ENCE, Dihar at 209k is the only one I class as safe. Despite Madden's 199k price tag, he's just a little bit too hit or miss to be worth the risk. Dihar is a great T-sided player, and in a weaker group, he has a good potential to farm you points. Because of that, Attacker is a decent role choice, or just sit safe with Leader. Another interesting pick from Group A is Volt. Gamer Legion find themselves in a group where they have a pretty good shot at, if not winning it, at least placing in the top 2. And Volt has been a consistent performer for them. He's also very cheap at just 200k, so you're not risking too much by picking him up. He's another player that leans decently into Attacker, or you can throw support on him. We have eco picks galore this event. Because of that, I'm going to be focusing on the true eco picks. Those sub 190k bronze baddies that free up all your cash for the big ballers. First up, a repeat offender for this category. It's Cello. Of all the bronzes, he has the highest average rating, sitting just shy of 1.0. Furia have a lot to prove this event, but have picked an Apex and come close to topping complexity in recent outings. Cello is a high variance player, with the potential to pop off or fall off, but at 183k, that's what you're paying for. Plus, he's a great candidate for Headshot Machine. A similar player on the more risky end would be Sense, the Academy graduate to Apex who made himself known with his 1v5 versus Gamer Legion in Sydney, but has had very up and down results since. Surprisingly though, he does perform better against stronger teams, with great showings versus Big and Astralis recently. Apex are a massive underdog, but at 179k, Sense is incredibly cheap and could be worth the money he frees up. Support is his best role, or noob if you have no faith and just want the extra cash. Another eco pick that could run deep is Glaive. He's currently one of the most picked players. To be fair, that was because Snappy was originally available in the draft, so everyone that picked him will now be rocking Glaive. One of the greatest IGLs to touch the game, there's no doubt that ENCE found a good replacement. But with no officials in CS2 on record, and likely little time in the server with the team, Glaive is a risky choice. However, his numbers at the tail end of his time in Astralis were solid, and for 184k, he'd allow you to comfortably pick into nerds if you wish to double up on ENCE. Roles are a big question mark, so I'd likely stick with Leader to be safe. A lot of options are available this event to go for, but remember, these are the final fantasy events of the season, so don't be afraid to take some risks. As always, good luck. This has been Fantasy Focus, brought to you by 22Bet.